Hey everybody, this is Perch. Events. If you go online, if you look at news article writers, pretty much everyone universally talks pretty consistently about how much they hate them. If you go to YouTube videos, if you go to kind of fan reactions, even things in the old letter pages, this isn't necessarily a new phenomenon. Letter pages often, of course, are gatekept by the publisher who's deciding to print the letters, and at various times during the letter page, you would have more or less gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is the wrong word. Just Marvel would not publish like a 20-page rant about how crappy their comics were in a letter page. They would typically stick to more lighter-hearted stuff, usually more positive stuff. Occasionally there'd be a negative, but one that's very timid. But events has been typically discussed as an annoyance by customers for many, many years. That they interrupt storylines, that they feel like there's event overload. I was reminded of this because I was going back and looking at Fall of the Mutants, and even in Fall of the Mutants in the letter page, you see people talking about being concerned that Marvel was getting into doing too many events, that they just had kind of the Mutant Massacre crossover. Now here comes another one, and this is printed in the letter page. It's kind of funny. Of course, the letters are written months before the comic is produced. This is one of the Fall of Mutants comics, and the event is obviously going. And then this person writes in saying, "I'm skeptical about this upcoming Fall of the Mutants thing," and Marvel's like, "Well, we hope you liked it anyway. This first bombastic, crazy issue, and all the rest." But the question is this: if fans and customers have consistently complained about events, and sometimes creators too. Peter David, pretty famously, pretty publicly, would complain about events interrupting his run and how much he hated them. If that's the case, then why do the publishers keep doing it? If there's almost universal dislike and people criticizing events, why in the world does the publisher not just keep doing it, but we all long for the quaint old days when there was like one event a year. Today, there's far more than that. Well, because no matter what people say, no matter what customers complain about, no matter how many videos get made about too many events, this is the decline of Western civilization because here comes another stupid Marvel event. They sell. They sell better than the ongoing comics consistently. I wish that wasn't the case, but it 100% is the case. The events do better. So what's happening there is people are complaining about them, saying they don't like them, but the sales say otherwise. And some people have tried to make the argument, well, they technically aren't selling. The stores are the ones, the duped stores are the ones who are ordering into these events, but they're actually just sitting there dying on the shelves. Well, yes, there are some copies of events that certainly don't sell. And there's kind of this old retailer game where how quick will the event die off? Most events, the first issue of the event tends to do very well. And then usually the second or the third issue will do okay. And then they tend to decline very rapidly, kind of like regular comics have gone. And one of the reasons for that is retailers would tend to overorder on the first couple issues of events, because what would happen is customers would come in seeing that the event was interrupting the regular title they were collecting, and be like, well, I should probably get that. And then they would go back and they would go to the shelf and they would pick up like the first 2 or 3 issues of the event because they'd be out by then, and and then forget promptly to continue with it, and that's why you'd see the sales fall. Check your run, check your heart. I'll bet you'll find that you too have some events in your collection where you have like the first 3 issues of it and then just no more of them. And you may not have even made a conscious choice to stop buying the event. It was kind of one of these out of sight, out of mind things. You buy Daredevil, you see the event is crossing into Daredevil, and you pick up, I might as well pick up these 2 issues, and then you just never go back for more because it didn't catch you. But regardless of all that, events sell. And it's one of those disconnects that happens between customers and actual kind of reality, is customers almost, like I said, uniformly hate events. They complain about them constantly. There's a lot of disagreement about it, but regardless, they still buy them. That tends to be what sells, and So over time, what's happened is the publisher has just leaned further and further into that model. It's very hard to escape events now. Back, 15 years ago, I think there was this moment in time where customers might have, hard rejected the events and the publishers would have gone in a different direction. But the lesson has clearly been established at this point that not only do customers buy them, but the appetite for events seems to be, pretty constant. It's as if the readers are being somewhat tricked into just collecting events and letting go of the original titles. Marvel is certainly eyeing that as an option. You're seeing a trend of more short-term limited series. I mean, good God, today Marvel announced Reptile from Avengers Academy. On the one hand, awesome. I'm glad to see that there. Wait, was Reptile Avengers Academy? He was in there, but no, we're thinking about somebody else. This is the later one where they were worried he was going to be a bad guy. What was that? It doesn't. Anyway, one of the Avengers books that came and went. I'm glad to see them digging back into their line and going, "Hey, wait a minute, we've got a Mexican American character. Hey, we let's do something with this guy." It's funny because Marvel made such a big deal out of the fact that a lot of these titles were all white, and it's like, no, you've been doing this for years. What are you doing? Anyway, by the time you're starting to announce Reptile, the limited series, I mean, assuming it's let's be honest, it's a limited series one way or another. By the time you're announcing that comic and then a bunch of events, what you're basically signaling is that you've moved into a new model where it is events and limited series, and that's where you're going. Last year gave us, everything from Iron Man 2020 to Empire to Outlawed to Ten of Swords to King in Black. And that was in an abbreviated year where the publisher took a couple months off. This year we're getting more. This is, it's one of those, I think, realities that customers, fans have to face. And that is, yeah, you say you hate events, but you buy them. And as long as you're buying them in these kinds of numbers, there's going to continue to be events. And this is just the future. This is the way it's going to be. And, it tells me one thing. It tells me that a lot of the people who are complaining about the events are not the people buying the comics. They're opting out completely. And so if that's true, then the question mark becomes, who are buying the comics? Who is this mystery audience? Because you're not seeing a bunch of people necessarily go all in on events on social media or online either. You see definitely some shills. You see some channels that really kind of beg to get interviews with the various comic creators, so they'll say positive things about everything. You see some of that, and you definitely see the same kind of thing on, say, Facebook or Twitter or whatever. You see people going, "Oh my God, this issue of Outlawed #1 is like the best issue in all of comics." You see that, but it's just tiny. I mean, you're seeing just insignificant amounts of people. Yet the core comic buying audience, particularly of Western mainstream, and yes, by the way, I too, when I say Western, the first thing I think about is it's a Cowboys book. But anyway, in U.S. North American comics, the customer base is largely spoken, and what they've said is we are trained to go for events. This is what we want to buy. This is what we do, and that's why the publishers keep cranking them out. Wish it wasn't that way, but that's definitely what we've got. I don't know. It's even the audience, when I've done some of these shows or I go on West's channel or other things, people are like, "Man, there's too many events. God, I hate these Marvel events. Let's talk King in Black." It's like, okay. That's an event, though. I for one, man, on a personal level, yeah, I would love to see a moratorium on events. I think this kind of goes into the same case of comics needs to take its medicine, and it will be unpleasant, and it'll be crappy, and some sales may dip. But comics has to build up the premise and the promise of ongoing series that are not interrupted constantly by events, that can stand on their own, that have sales momentum. Again, look at The Walking Dead. You need to have more of that. We didn't see the Walking Dead Savage Dragon crossover issue. We just had Walking Dead. We need the big two to survive. Need more of those, and they need to stop thinking about this is how we're going to build up to the big event. You gotta have some runs that can hold on their own feet. I mean, you've listened to the retrospectives I've done, and you've got runs, these kind of 2-year runs, and that just seems charming now. A 2-year interrupted run. I mean, who can imagine it? Um, it's one of those things that sooner or later the comic industry is going to have to wrap its arm around and wrestle with the fact that they need to strengthen that part of the business. And in the short term, that might cause sales to dip because our customer base is going for events and going for these cheap pops. But it's a deteriorating business if they don't get out of that. And it's one reason. It's one more reason why I have a lot of optimism for the indies, because you're seeing a lot of indies just do what the big two should do. They are committing to a creative team, and they're just going for it. And you're getting 20, 30 issue runs, sometimes higher, out of the indies as long as they have money, and then they can keep pushing it out. And it's people are signaling they like that. You're seeing growth there. The event world feels like junk food to me. It's fun. People can kind of get excited about it in the short term, and it pops some initial numbers, and that's what's driving the industry right now. But you're left feeling hollow at the other end of it. So, my opinion. What about you? Are you willing to admit you like events? You're one of these people. You buy in. You're good. You don't understand all this event talk. Are you one of those people who are like, nope, it's all a massive conspiracy trick. Those numbers are not real. The big two are faking you out. Perch, you're an idiot. Let me know that in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. You can get in touch with me in the description of the video. And thanks for listening.